Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Monteith, and I have been making music under the name Deadbeat for 20 years in a variety of contexts. I've made music that I might call ambient, techno, house, but probably the micro-genre that I'm most well known for is what they refer to as Dubtechno. And Dubtechno is an electronic music genre which borrows both from elements of the house and techno that were born in Chicago and Detroit, and also dub reggae that manifested in Jamaica starting in the 1950s. We're here today to talk a little bit about my studio process. We'll be looking at a track an unreleased track that I have put together with my good friend Martin Becerro, and adding some new elements to it, and specifically adding Dubtechno chords and some additional effects to the composition that would put it in the realm of the genre we are speaking of. So, without further ado, we'll start by taking a quick listen here to the initial composition, which is a collection of both analog drum machines, acoustic congas, melodica, some guitar, and some electronic bass. And yeah. This initial synth piece, or initial synth patch, just to give some frame of reference, is actually used with the internal wavetable synth in Ableton Live. And I worked for a company in Montreal called Applied Acoustic Systems, which is a music software company that were one of the real pioneers of virtual instruments and one of the very, very most cutting-edge music software companies over the course of the late 90s and early 2000s. Over the course of 15 albums over the last 20 years, my process has been very, very much in the box, and software has remained the most important tool set for me across the board. As you can see here in the studio, I do have, as a result of sharing it with my good friend Marco T. Ramschmidt, I have had the opportunity to have access to hardware synthesizers as well, and enjoy them incredibly. And they've become part of my process over the years. But I'm also very, very, I very strongly believe that, and especially in this day and age, that it's important to convey the message that you don't need all of these hardware synthesizers to make music. You can do it all in the box. You can do it everything with software, and with great controllers from people like Native Instruments or Arturia or whatever. There is the opportunity to have all of the sound generation of your creative process happen in the box without shelling out for these hardware synths, you know? Having many years of experience with different studio tools, there is most certainly a very, very particular aesthetic difference between the output of a software synthesizer or a hardware synth. This has a lot to do with many different factors, with regards to gain staging, with regards to amping, with all these sorts of things. But the bottom line is, if you're excited about making music, you can do it all inside the box, and you can produce exactly the same kind of results with the tools that are available via software these days as you can with hardware synths. So, to look at what we're listening to here right now, this was a kind of a jam session between myself and my good friend Martin Becerro, who is originally from Chile, who's based in Paris now, and he is a sound poet and electronic musician, electroacoustic musician. You can hear, for instance, if we solo this track of him, this is a performance that he did very, very much freeform, entirely with his voice and a single delay pedal, you know? And this is like, the idea of sound poetry goes back to the early. It's very much connected with the electroacoustic community in Paris and France, and very, very much involved with like a freeform expression, that like taking poetry outside of the realm of the word and making it all about sound. And this is the culture and the history that he grew up in. And as such, if we compare the recordings that he's made here with the delay pedal and to recordings that we made with together with the MS10 synthesizer over there, we can very, very easily do something similar with the MS10, like with the synthesizer. So. In many ways, what he's doing with his throat and with his voice is very, very similar to what you would do on a monophonic analog synth with resonance and filter control and everything like this. So it says a lot about why analog synthesizers from the very, very beginning, with Bob Moog and Tom Oberheim and the original developers of this, why they resonated, not like no pun intended, with human beings, because it was there's a very organic connection. If you think about acoustic instruments, guitars, cellos, all these things are much more difficult to control. If I want to make something expressive and want to say something with this guy, all I have to do is go. And if I want to say something loud, then I have to go. And if I want to say something quiet, then, you know, so it's a very like a very, very didactic relationship with sound on an incredibly pure level, you know? So whatever, we'll record a little bit of this guy, just so we've got it. Yeah. And the thing is like you really have like the tactile, didactic I mean, you have to think about, like, I don't remember when the MS10 came out, but you're talking about something that came out probably in the early 70s or something like this, you know, that like and you're talking about an entirely new way of expressing sound, and that the designers of this really spent a great deal of time thinking about. The MS10 is a one-voice synthesizer. They could have made this, it could have been 80 controls, you know, that somebody someday sat down with the T in Japan and said, okay, what are the minimum number of controls that I can put on this new voice that nobody has ever heard before to make it a tactile, enjoyable experience to play, you know? And you can't deny that they succeeded completely. Like that it's an absolutely beautiful instrument, you know? Like it's just really, and every knob movement and every motion in performing with it feels very much like bending notes on a guitar or putting your hands down on a piano, and really like it is an absolute work of art in terms of creative expression, you know? That raises the issue of what I said before, that you can always that software has reached a stage where you can do everything inside the box. The hands-on tactility is the thing that is so important. And that's why things like this Native Instruments control keyboard or this Arturia Mini Lab, like that the MIDI controllers are doubly important these days. And I think this is an area of the industry which we're going to see a lot of growth in over the coming years. You know, that it's really like an there was recently at the NAMM which is the National Association of Music Merchants in California last year. They had a meeting with Yamaha, with Dave Smith, with a lot of the electronic music producers, and they committed to making MIDI 2.0 a reality, because Dave Smith invented MIDI in 1977 or 78, you know, and it hasn't changed since then. And MIDI lives in the realm of 0 to 128 point resolution. And obviously these days we need a lot more than that, you know, and there's a lot more room to, and if you talk about real-time feedback and all of these sorts of things that are happening in the development of like new controllers, MIDI needed the update that it's finally going to get, you know. Outside of that, like enough nerding out now. Well, like so let's go back to our song here, and we'll listen to what we've recorded, and we'll say. So here's our MS10 recording. Very, very quiet. This track, this recording session is 15 minutes long, and one of the things that I do because essentially what we've done with this MS10 track is it's just spice. It's just an additional effect. And one of the simplest tricks that I do quite often in Ableton Live is just because you have many different warp modes, and one of them is called texture, and texture is a granular mode. And essentially granular synthesis is a method of producing sound where a larger sound file is divided into individual grains, and you can then control the speed, direction, pitch, and everything of the individual grains. So one of the simplest things that you can do for creating absolutely oddball textures in a situation like this is just I've switched it to the texture stretch algorithm, and instead of right now the initial tempo of the track is 120 beats per minute, and what I'm going to do is tell Ableton that the initial tempo of this is 960. So I've stretched it by 4 times. And we can listen to what this does initially. This is with no additional processing. This is stretched to its absolute maximum. There's probably, the thing is, when you start to stretch things out in this way, you get a lot of unnecessary or inaudible low frequency information. So in general, what I would tend to do is probably remove some of that, and we can see it here in the EQ. Like everything is happening down around 100 hertz, and it's going down really low into the 20 hertz range. So should we take everything out here? Let's say below 100. Probably add some echo to it to give it a little bit of space, you know. Switch the delay to ping pong, so it gives it a little bit more space. So now we've got like a whatever. We've got this giant, weird environment that everything else is existing in. You know, that potentially to make it more, I would say probably with these sorts of things, which can be a little bit resonant. I would say I would probably traditionally would probably pick. One of the drum tracks. Here we've got a couple of options. There's the 909, which is just the kick and the hi-hat. There's these electronic drums, and there's these offbeat dancehall kicks. So if we take a compressor here, we'll just use the internal one from live, and we can explore what happens if we use the sidechain on this. So first we'll take the obvious one. The obvious one says, and this gives us our very whatever typical kind of EDM sidechain, dead mouse, eat your heart out, whatever. But the interesting thing, I think, a lot of the time is like while that is what people reach for by default, it makes a lot of sense to explore some of the other options. So what happens if we go for the dancehall kicks, which are halftime? What happens there? Let's see. Something slightly more dramatic, but then what if we go for the congas, for instance, which are very dynamic. think probably more in the right. Yeah. Those sorts of decisions as well, if you're like if you're talking about sidechaining different, particularly with sidechaining things, where you're, because with sidechaining you're creating new rhythms, and the other side of things is where working in an entirely hardware realm of things, if you decided to sidechain something, you made the decision, it's done for the end of the day. But there might be in this song, maybe there's a moment further on here, I don't know, where things get more kicking, that maybe we do want it sidechained with the 909, and that you play with these dualities and musicalities that it's like I mean, I remember having such a profound experience the first time that I ever DJ'd at Berghain, and that by changing the bass on the mixer in the main room there was really about you were changing the air pressure. You were really you were changing the pressure in the room completely, you know? And that is very, very similar to the kind of stuff that you can do with sidechain, that you can have, maybe it gets sidechained with the congas for a little bit. Maybe it gets sidechained with a hi-hat for a little bit. Then maybe when you want your bass to smack and everything, then it gets sidechained with the kick drum a little bit, and you change the like the way the track breathes, you know, because it's all, because that's all the negative space. That's not instruments. That's not individual voices. It's just the air, you know. Yeah. Now with that said, we'll go back here to one of my favorite tricks, or the tool set in my bag. Is I absolutely love vocoders, but not in a Kraftwerkian vocal sense, but as a way of repurposing rhythms within a composition. And for that right now, like we'll just take, I've just got here, we'll turn down the MS10 track that we've got here, but I just loaded up the internal analog synth here in Live. So let's we'll make some sort of chord of some kind. Some sort of, there we go. That's fine. We'll just take funnily enough, a C major. There we go. Okay, that's like, maybe we'll add a 9 to it. We'll just, perfect. We'll just record this. Whatever. That's fine. Then we'll take this. So then what we'll do, we'll make sure we're on point here for the, no, not quite. There's something is a little bit off there, but it's okay. Well, okay, that's fine. We'll take that, and then we'll make a whole mess of this. And then let's see what we've got for. It's a quite active, quite dynamic thing, or maybe we'll use the where's the congas? Let's see. Okay, that's quite a dynamic track. So we'll copy the congas here, and then we will take the vocoder. And the vocoder, of course, is like a, if we play it on its own, this is with the internal synthesizer, so it's with it's just with noise. And we can change the number of bands. So the number of the rhythm is driving a bank of filters, which right now are just being, it's just a noise source. But in our case, we're going to take an external signal for the carrier signal, which is what determines the pitch of it, and that we'll go to the analog here. We'll grab a utility here, give it a little bit more drive. And this is basically like I mean, whatever. Essentially, this is like this synth driven by rhythm is the early stage of like a dub chords period, Dubtechno. This is, so now we've got the basis, you know, like this is now salt and vinegar, you know. But then this moves on its own and it has its rhythm, but essentially needs like now it's like the next question is like, okay, well, how do we change the timbral character of this? And the two ways you would do that would be with filtering, and you change the frequency distribution of this pattern and the phase distribution of this pattern. So let's do that right away. So we do, first we'll do the filter. And we'll switch it to an MS-20. So here we've added some filtering. Of course, low-pass filters sound fantastic, but they are going to fight in the mix against kick drums and bass lines. So we can double filter it. We'll have the modulations happening outside of the range of kick drums and bass lines. And the other place that you can make things move is, of course, with phase. Okay, so now we've got the phaser working too. Take down the resonance of this guy a little bit. And then, of course, if you want to do dub anything, the last thing to add is delay, and that's like you can't do dub without delays. And thankfully, the last versions of Ableton have a beautiful, beautiful tape-ish delay called simply echo. And here we go. We got like a Dubtechno Chords, eat your heart out. And if we listen to how it's going with everything else, we'll take this down. And as a last trick of just because the thing is like when repurposing these rhythm tracks to use as modulator signals for vocoders. You can run into the situation where you're doubling up on rhythms and everything. It just gets too crowded. And an easy trick with that, instead of it having it start on the one, like the other one, offset it a little bit. And see what happens with the... and create these sort of like offset double rhythms. The other thing with these things, especially when delays get introduced, they can become quite over-resonant and start drowning the mix a little bit. But with this vocoder and with a lot of other vocals, you also have this envelope. And with the Ableton one, the other one that's incredible is that there's a Thomann filter in it. So you can also move things down either into the lower octaves, or in some cases, sometimes and this is a great one. I mean, in a live setting, this is a great one. I mean, the Thomann filter on the Ableton vocoder is something that, like, with my MIDI controller, is always on blast. You know, that like you can go, but it's not a simple filter. You're changing the timbrality of the entire space, and it's again all about pushing air, you know. And it's the same thing what I was talking about with playing in Berghain, you know. It's all about air pressure, and that's what we're doing. We're moving air when we play music, you know. And it's about doing this in a dramatic and comfortable way, you know, and that you feel people moving with you within that airspace, you know. That's the yeah. So everybody, thanks so much for watching and listening, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, I will be available on the YouTube channel within reason for to answer them. And yeah, thanks again. And create these sort of like offset double rhythms.